Hi, Darcy. So nice to see you today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Patty, for inviting me. I'm
Of course.
excited about doing this.
Yeah, it's
Real
so fun.
live recording.
Yeah, it's fun. And I want to hear about what you're doing, how you're changing lives, the work that you're doing back in my home state. How fun to meet somebody that is from North Dakota and just doing this life-changing transformational work. So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing.
Well, first of all, I have a pretty lengthy background in yoga, meditation, Pilates, shamanism. I had a brick and mortar studio for about 20 years. And when I was working with clients one-on-one, I started to recognize that there was a certain handful of people who really had a difficult time, A, doing the work to get themselves out of pain, or B, sort of getting in their own way. Like they had lots of reasons for not doing the work, or lots of reasons why they continued to have the ongoing pain that they were having. And I became very curious about that. And what I recognized is that I felt like I was working harder than they were. So I stepped away from the business for a few years. I waited till my son got out of high school. And once he went off to college, I decided to do a deeper dive into first myself. Because the thing was, I was beginning to recognize these patterns in people. And what was it within me that had some sort of responsibility for feeling the way I was feeling about other people, right? So I went deep into shamanism to begin with, and that was very eye-opening experience because I was able to look back at, my ancestors and my past and to really look at like how did my childhood and everything that happened back then have an effect on me? And what is it about that I repeat today? And how is it affecting how I make decisions? How does it affect my happiness? How does it affect me moving forward in life? Right. And the things I choose to carry around on my shoulders. So then I decided to go into a coaching program, which was phenomenal. It just blew my mind because all of the spirituality of yoga and meditation was beautiful. But then there's this whole science of quantum physics that came in and said, you know what? All of that stuff is real. By the way, you are completely in charge and responsible for absolutely everything happening in your life. And you can change it anytime you want. Any day you can start over. And I remember the one saying that my coach used to say quite frequently is the outer world is a reflection of your inner world. Really pay attention to that.
Yes.
And that will put you back in the driver's seat of what's happening in your life. So I decided, this period of time when this really became really obvious to me was when I was in my midlife transition. It was a profound time in my life because I was just wide open to wanting, needing, ready to really do something different with my life and who I was. And so, yeah, so I decided, well, there must be other women in this midlife transition being the key word, that are feeling the same way. And now that I've gone through that and like have accumulated so many tools myself, and I can see myself from a completely different perspective. That's got to be the path I take, right? Is to work with women in that transition. So that's how I got started. And, living in North Dakota, I obviously we're a low population state. Uh, and, you know, I'll just say it, it's kind of a conservative state. And a lot of people have that um, maybe opinion of themselves. They feel sort of victimized by life a lot. Not everybody, but there's definitely a lot of people you run into. Now I live on the part of the state that's a bit more populated and a little bit more liberal, so people do see things a little bit differently. But The beautiful thing about being online is the whole world, is your oyster. And I just keep reaching out for the people who really want to make a transformation in their life and they're ready and they're open.
That's
So yeah, that's the people I work with.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And all of us have that opportunity, right, to transition. I like to call it evolving, right? That
Mhm,
we're evolving our way of thinking into a more unified space
mhm,
because we're learning through quantum physics, through science, through all of these different means that we really don't live in isolation. Even if we think we do, we are connected to others, and our energy and our words and our actions influence others. And so when we get centered, when we are whole and know that we have everything that we need for happiness within inside of us, when we learn to reconnect our neural pathways in a way that support our best life, then we can start living in joy. And it is in some ways so simple. And yet we have learned for most of our lives to sort of see what comes up for us, to take on, opportunities that arise, but oftentimes we are not given that knowledge and that power to go out and to create the life that we want. Somehow I learned very early that poking the universe, as Steve Jobs says,
mhm.
has the universe poke back at us. And when we poke, the universe pokes back, and it can be a really playful, enjoyable experience
Absolutely.
when we understand that. And especially when we find other people to play and poke with, right?
Yeah.
We can get really excited to have those relationships where we live in a place where we're supportive of each other and
Mhm.
not threatened by the work of another, but instead join together with others who are doing like work to help bring more joy. Because when we get into that place of fear and anxiety, which most of our country is in right now. We're going into an election, and half the country, at least, is going to be devastated come the results of the election. And
Mhm.
we are stronger than that as individuals. I believe we've been sort of primed and pushed down this path to believe that this election is, going to be devastating to half of the country. And
Yeah,
I believe, everything has a season. Everything has a possibility to change. And no day, no single day do I wake up and my life is the same as it was yesterday.
for
Things
sure.
all around me have changed. My viewpoint has changed. The dreams I had last night, right, awaken new concepts for me. So I'm not the same person, even hour to hour. Even having this conversation with you will
Yes.
shift so much of my knowledge and my thinking, and it will bring my attention to my home state of North Dakota, right? To, to how do we support fundamental change for those who are ready to evolve to that next level of understanding about our brains and our energy and how we impact other people. So to me, it's an exciting time to
For
be.
sure, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. You reminded me of a really interesting experience I had yesterday with my mom. We sort of see the world very different. Um, and we got into a little bit of an argument to the point where, I went this way and she went that way. And I walked away from that and I'm like, oh my gosh, what an opportunity. So I really needed some time to step away from the experience that I was having and the frustration I was feeling, and really do this deep dive into why am I experiencing this? What is in me right now that is bringing up this trigger of really, I kind of lashed back at her because I was just so taken back by what she said. And I sat with it all night. I'm like, I am not going to just go apologize to apologize because I needed to do the apology for sure. And I see that now. But I'm not going to just do that because that's the thing to do. I am going to do that when I really have come to this place of understanding where and what state I was in when I did that and why did I do that? Like what is underneath, right? So like all night well, not all night, but a large part of the night I journaled And I asked myself these really deep questions because I was so determined to become really conscious of my reaction and where it really came from. And I realized that it's always from love or fear, right? And I'm
Yes,
like, oh my God, this is coming
exactly.
from a deep state of fear in me that I have been unwilling to see until now. This is an opportunity. So then after I digested all of that, I decided, okay, do I want to react to fear or do I want to come back at this with love? So I meditated and I just opened my heart and I really, you intellectually get this concept that we are all one and we're just in different bodies. We're just carrying this body around with us for now while we're having this experience here on earth, right?
Mhm.
But underneath is what matters. It's that centeredness, it's that state of beingness. And I'm like, I don't want to be that other thing. I want to be this.
Mhm.
How am I going to get to that? And here was the thing that made the biggest difference is for me to have compassion for myself for making the mistake that I say I never am going to make. Because, oh, wait a minute, I'm human. Right? But to admit that to myself, like I had to really have a conversation with my ego and say, you know what? I know you were protecting me in that moment, but that's not who I want to be. And I'm going to come back from this place of love in my heart for her, even though we see things differently. And it changed this morning. It changed everything. It changed everything. Now, I didn't change her opinion on what we were arguing about, and she didn't change mine either. But what matters is how we respond to accepting people's difference of opinions and being okay with that. I am not in charge of her opinion, of her life, or changing it, right?
That
So,
is so
it,
beautiful. Like right there in a nutshell, I believe is the work that we get to do as human beings on this planet.
absolutely.
When we let go of a need to control anybody else's life, decisions, behaviors, attitudes, moods, right? When we can let go of that and be fully okay with where we are and letting go of any control. To me, this is us finding our flow for ourselves, right? We get to that place where we just feel love for other human beings. When I did my deep dive into the forest and literally hours, my husband used to laugh and he goes, "Is there somebody down there?" Like you're going all day, every day. Because I was down just really getting to know myself, pulling these weeds, these huge 12-foot Scotch broom weeds, day after day after day, building paths, building stairs, building walkways, and really dissecting my thoughts. And I have different places on the property. I have a place called perspective. I have a place called gratitude. I have a place called forgiveness. And forgiveness is really a really rough spot for me. Um, and that's a whole story behind that. But what I will say is that in my deep dive to understand who I am as a person and what my opportunity is, I went through a lot of people in my life. I went through a lot of situations in my life. I I ran through these stories that I've been telling myself, and I thought I was going to need to forgive all these people in my life who didn't honor me or didn't care for me or didn't protect me. And what I found in the deepest dive of my life was that the only one I had a need to forgive was myself because
Mhm,
I hadn't met my own personal requirements. And when
mhm,
I was able to forgive myself and to realize that when I know better, I do better, then my whole life became different. It's not, there's nobody I need to forgive. I just need to go inside myself and love that little girl who made decisions. I need to love that woman who I was in my middle age and the decisions I made. I was not, I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've hurt people. And when I go back and acknowledge that and forgive myself and talk to these people in my life and look for reconciliation, then I can go to bed at night. I feel secure. I feel calm and peaceful within myself. And there's nothing better in my life because when I'm calm and peaceful, I'm also creative and energetic and grateful and kind.
Of course, of course. Yeah, that's such a beautiful point. Is is recognizing how important it is to forgive ourselves for something. It reminded me again of another question that I often get from my clients is how do I know? How do I know when I've gotten there? And I'm like, well, first of all, there is no end,
No.
right? As long as you're in this body, being who you are here to be, it will always be about discovering something more about yourself. It's like, the analogy of peeling an onion. There's layer after layer after layer, and it goes on forever,
But it's a
which
journey. But we can see it as this just amazing journey of discovery.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, just think how boring it would be if you got to the center of the onion and it was all over. Like there was nothing else to discover. Like what fun would that be to live a life without any emotions almost, right? Because our emotions tell us so much. Anyway, what I was going to make reference to is one of the things I really encourage in all of my sessions is we always, always, always start with a centering technique that I bring from my shamanism background and getting people into their bodies to actually feel where they're holding the thing that is causing the most upheaval in their life. Like, let's feel that. Where are you holding that in your body? And when I notice when people start to, including myself, when I can recognize where I'm holding it, because your body will always, 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 always tell you what's happening in your life. It's your mind that gets in the way, right? Your heart and your body is holding all of this information, just waiting for you to uncover it. And it's just there. It's just absolutely, I can't say it any other way than your deepest self is just waiting for you to hear the message. And it's not out there, right? It's not a new car, it's not a new house, it's not a thing. It's all here. The universe is all within us. All of the answers to all of our questions are just waiting to be discovered.
And I love that. And I love it so much. And the more, the science comes in to sort of support this, right? And the science is now saying that we hold our grandparents' memories. We hold these
Mhm.
stories, these fears, these insecurities, everything from our ancestors, from our
Yeah.
grandparents. And one of the things that I've looked back and seen because I'm breaking some generational trauma over fears, right? And I'm seeing it arise with my mom and my aunt, even over my godson, right? My aunt wouldn't write in a children's book she bought for my daughter because she thought she'd jinxed the pregnancy. And she said,
Mhm.
I'm going to wait until the child's born. I'm not going to write in the book. I don't want to jinx it. And to go back through my family and realize how many miscarriages had happened through generation on both sides of my family. And that there is this fear of, am I going to lose this child? And I don't want to write in a book because that might be too painful to have a book with a child, a child's name, even though we knew his name. And so I'm seeing this, right? And I was also then raised by, potentially family members who didn't want to get too close to a child because what if this child doesn't make it? And so I'm seeing that and understanding it at such a deep level that, I teased my husband. I said, I used to look for arts and crafts all the time, right? And I'd buy things at the store. Now I'm going to the forest and I don't have to spend money on anything except maybe some spray paint. And, it's like I've got this new hobby that doesn't cost me anything. And this hobby is really getting to know myself and to create this toolkit where I can show up every day and to the best of my ability, I've created an environment that is supportive of me, right? There's not a lot. Well, I'm working on the clutter, right? Because there's all these things I've collected because I think I need them for some reason. And then I
Right.
realize it's just anxiety producing, right? There's a pile of stuff here or a pile of stuff there, and it interrupts the flow of my day. And so as I'm cleaning my house, as I'm organizing my environment, I'm creating this soft landing for myself, this place that I can wake up and thrive because my environment is soothing. The relationships I'm choosing to prioritize are caring and supportive. I'm
Mhm.
creating an environment both internally and externally where I can be this joy-filled person that gets to show up because I've prepared my life for it on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Um, I recently got back from a week-long retreat in Italy, and we talked about three things for a whole week, and it was judgment, resistance, and attachment.
Say that again.
And
Judgment.
resistance and attachment.
Okay, nice. You
Okay.
didn't happen to meet a woman named Diana Strophis there, did you?
I did not. No, I did
She just got
not.
back from a week-long retreat in
In
Italy.
Italy. Oh, yeah. It's a great place to go for a retreat.
Yeah, wonderful.
Beautiful. Um, anyway, of course, m- I think many people may or may not recognize the power of attachment to things, right? And how it causes suffering in our lives. And it's not just to the physical things in our life, but it's also to patterns. It's also to our thoughts or our beliefs, right? And one of the things we committed to asking ourselves while we were there was, is it true?
Byron
Right?
Katie. Byron Katie's work is just so
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yes. So it's really interesting to keep bringing that in because there's sometimes I find myself going, well, of course that's true, right? And then the faster I respond in that way, the more I know I have something to look at, right? What is my then resistance to not recognizing my attachment? And then all of that creates this judgment in me.
Mm.
And when I intentionally, purposefully look at what I'm judging, I can almost always see those other two things going on as well. And it's all causing this level of suffering in myself, right? And I can feel it in my body because I keep bringing it back to my body. I'm like, okay, this is good information. What am I going to do with this? Right. And it's again back to the whole thing of unpeeling these layers that I've been carrying around. And the beautiful thing about that is life is always the universe, life, God, whoever, whatever you want to call it, is always putting in front of you that which makes you more aware of who you really are, right? All of those experiences, everything that shows up in front of you on a daily basis is all about just bringing you to greater awareness of that pure love that we all are. And I know that sounds really esoteric to a lot of people, but I'm telling you, that's where the joy is.
It-
That's where the happiness is. That's where the love is. That's where the letting go of judgment, resistance, and attachment all is. All of it is, right? So when you were talking earlier about ancestral patterns that we carry with us, I think it's also becoming more and more, mm, I don't know if mainstream is the word I quite want to use, but that's what's coming up right now
Maybe just
is
more
how,
accepted, maybe more just
yeah, to really look at those patterns and decide, like consciously decide, do you want to end this pattern in your family or do you want to continue it, right? Because you can be the one that actually breaks the chain. But it takes some consciousness, right? Some awareness, some intention to actually break that chain. And we worked a lot with that when I went through my shamanism training. It was incredible to see, really bring that up in ourselves and see that. And then I would talk to my family about it. They didn't really want anything to do with what I was talking about. They just wanted to believe what they wanted to believe. And I'm like, well, I found this pretty fascinating because I'm carrying this belief, this DNA
Mhm.
that was created hundreds of years ago. I don't think I want to carry that in me or pass it on. So I'm breaking this pattern. Would
I
you guys
love
be
it.
okay with that?
And
Yeah, it's
the news is they don't have to participate, right? We
sure.
can invite those in our lives to participate. We can have conversations. We have four kids, and there's really only one of them that has really these deeper conversations with me about how it can impact, her life. And my hope is that over time, our other children will get curious. I think curiosity is one of my very favorite, and you mentioned curiosity earlier. Curiosity in every situation rather than judgment. If we can just embrace curiosity, and again, I'm going to go back to, I know we have a big election next week, and how can we get curious about how we can create the life that we want, regardless of the circumstances. We can choose to be the eye of the storm, and we can
Hmm.
choose to be centered. And that is my hope for people all over this country next week, that we can support that we can help bring down the volume, bring down the heat of the situation, and care for each other, to respect other people's opinions, to respect other people's ways of living, and for us just to be available for those when they are ready to create a transformation. Then you and I, and those of us who are doing our internal work, I think we're preparing for what I believe is an evolution of our human consciousness. It's our ability to really start to understand how we impact others, how our energy is distributed to other people, how we can walk into a room and either create an atmosphere of joy and possibility, or walk into a room and, scare the bejesus out of everyone in there if we choose. And
Right. Yeah.
that is always a choice, not just for leaders, but for all of us. If you ever want to test that out, walk into your next meeting and decide to shift the mindset. I mean, it could be bringing in, something playful and just saying, guys, this meeting has gotten really down in the dumps. What if we try something different today? Why don't you, whatever it is, we can
Right.
shift the energy. And unfortunately, a lot of, there's been some devastating, stories and things happening in our country, where somebody decides they've had enough. They blow a gasket. They don't understand, I don't think, and maybe they do, that when they go and do something destructive, it's not just in that time in history. This will have a ripple effects for
Yeah.
the rest of people's lives.
Mhm.
And on, the scale that we're at, our hope is that we will one by one help people create for themselves a more kind and centered life. And when we do that, I believe we can ripple that effect out to the others around us. Even when our parents or our friends aren't ready for that transformation, it's okay.
Mhm.
When we can be solid within ourselves, when they're ready, they will come and ask questions. When they're
Mhm.
ready for that growth, we can be that person. We don't have to try to jam it down their throats. We don't have to, like, bring them books every day and lecture them. We don't have to evangelize this. All I believe we have to do is be role models for how we can live in joy in our lives, and then be available to help others when they're ready.
Absolutely, 100%. And if we don't do the inner work, that all becomes superficial, right? Like there is, I personally believe there is no way around creating a difference than to look within, right? Because if we okay, so in the one of the reasons I say this is because I see a lot of women that I work with, and I think this is very common for women to overgive because it's the thing to do or it's the right thing to do. Yet they're giving from an already empty cup. They're not even giving from close to a full cup, let alone the overflow. And this is the one thing I talk about a lot is filling our cup and giving from the overflow. Because if our cup isn't always full and we're emptying our cup to give, then we're not really giving. We're actually depleting. And people might not be conscious of that happening in the moment, but it's happening underneath the surface. It's that deeper knowingness that people know without being conscious of, right? So it's kind of like what I said earlier. Like I wasn't ready to make the apology to my mom until I was ready to acknowledge that within me that was carrying this fear that actually caused the reaction, right? And I don't think there's a way around that. It cannot be superficial. It all has to come from deep within us. Deep.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's deep work sometimes. And I know that scares people to have to look at that side of themselves.
Well,
But I tell you, it is worth every tear I've ever shed.
I absolutely agree. And I really truly believe that our work is only within ourselves, right?
Hmm.
The moment we start to have a goal of changing somebody else or changing a situation or altering something outside of ourselves, then
Right.
we give away our power. Our power is when we take it back and say, I choose to live this beautiful life in understanding and centeredness, that I am not going to be shaken by those things happening outside of me, that I
Mhm.
can be that eye of the storm. I can be that steady rock for others. And when they're ready, they may come and they may want to learn. I can put things out on the internet, which is what we're doing, right? We're sharing the opportunity with other people. But the
Yes.
day, if I ever comes a day where I'm trying to change somebody else or lecture somebody else, which is what I don't want to do, then
Mhm.
that means that I'm putting my goals outside of myself to change another person. And the
Right.
only thing I want to do for the rest of my life is really truly understand how I can be my best self, and if those lessons help other people, then I'm happy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of goes back to your definition of how you explained who you were earlier. I can't remember if we were recording this at the moment, but you defined yourself as a mentor. And often when I tell people about what I do, I'll say, well, I'm a coach, but I'm really a mentor. And they're like, well, what's the difference? And I'm like, well, the difference is that I don't try to tell people what to do. I try to nudge them with questions on discovering what they need to do for themselves by themselves, right? I'm just mentoring them in the direction of the very thing that you were just talking about, right? It's not my job to tell you how to do it. It's my job to open your doors a little by asking questions for you to discover it for yourself. Because when you discover it for yourself, you're much more apt to accept it and to build upon it in any way that you want to increase your awareness, to increase your consciousness of your life and your response to life. Um, so anyway, it just felt sort of appropriate to kind of throw that in because coaching has become a pretty big business these days, right? And I'm I'm not sure how the wider public always receives it, other than I'm being told what to do because that's traditionally maybe what a coach does. But I prefer the word mentoring so much better because it empowers people to actually discover everything that's within them. It's,
Beautiful.
again, all there waiting, right?
All their
It
weight.
accomplishes everything you just said.
Yeah. And the word guide too works, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of guiding, because it's not my responsibility. Your happiness, someone else's happiness or their life.
Absolutely.
It's more it's how we look at it. And stress to me, and my husband taught me this years ago, is really just the separation of where things are and where we want things to be. And
Sure.
with gratitude and with inner work, we can bring those two things together as we move towards where we want to be, as
Yeah.
we develop these skills inside of ourselves to help us with that transition, to help us with that evolution of our mindset and as of where we are. This
Mhm.
has been so much fun, and I really appreciate you reaching out and connecting and having this conversation. And I hope we can continue it, especially since we're both from North Dakota. That was just
Okay.
such a fun little realization that we got to share. So thank you
Yeah,
for your time today. This has been really beautiful.
absolutely. Thank you for recording this, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Wonderful. Thank you, Darcy.